Sincere honor for me to introduce our next keynote speaker, who I had the chance to get to know part of his family already in Berlin not too long ago, so I'm very happy to have the chance to meet you for the first time today. And in many ways, I think your lecture will also fit in quite well with the curriculum of the afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, Ambassador M. Osman Siddique combines a business track record of over 25 years, with a powerful understanding of the public sector as well, gained during his service in 2 United States presidents. He served as ambassador to the Republic of Fiji, with concurrent accreditations to the Kingdom of Tonga, the Republic of Nauru, and the governments of Tuvalu from 1999 until 2001. Prior to serving in governments, Ambassador Siddique was the CEO of ITT Travelage, a company he founded in Washington, D.C. in 1976. Ambassador Siddique was also a founding member and shareholder of CorpNet International, a consortium of domestic and international travel companies with revenues in excess of over $1.5 billion. Ambassador Siddique serves on numerous boards, including the Board of Governors of the East-West Center and the Board of Directors of SFO Technologies. He's a member of the Diplomatic Council for SAFE, Securing America's Future Energy, and chairman of the America's Unofficial Ambassadors Diplomatic Council. The lecture topic that he's chosen today is the U.S. narrative in a highly fluid, multipolar, and increasingly complex Muslim world. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in a very special welcome for Ambassador M. Osman Siddique. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. I had the pleasure of meeting your mother. Wonderful lady. The old saying goes, the apple doesn't fall too far away from the tree. Ladies and gentlemen, this is indeed a little, it's a topic that I have picked because I'm not immune to criticism and contentious debate. The age of Henry Kissinger set piece as defined in his brilliant book about Metternich, A World Restored, has to be put in the back burner today. We are in the midst of a profound political and cultural revolution beyond any we have witnessed in recent human history, simply because communication now is ubiquitous, borderless, and instant. The traditional totalitarian state and with its centralized tools of control and governance are crumbling. Everyone in this room understands this on one level, especially technologically. Everyone lives it in their daily lives. But few of us can comprehend or even adjust to its full political, cultural, and diplomatic implications. In no area is this adjustment more difficult than for governments. The United States understands it better than Russia or China. But even we, where much of this technology has been developed, cannot even begin to comprehend how it will change foreign and military policy in the near future, tomorrow. Nowhere is this reality unfolding as quickly as in the Middle East. The Arab Spring is too tame a term to describe the events unfolding right before us. For this is just not a seasonal change. This is not a one-time affair. This is an existential change that none of us can begin to comprehend. Let's face it. The United States over these years have overinvested in some of the most brutal, anti-people, and undemocratic regimes in the Arab world. We should now look to supporting governments that are pro-people and pro-US, because nothing will be more stable and sustainable in the long run than a government that upholds the genuine aspirations of the common people. The unrest in Bahrain is a case in point. The Kingdom of Bahrain is a staunch ally of the United States. It also houses our Fifth Fleet. Yet it is cracking down on the majority Shia population there. Do you think this is sustainable in the long run? It didn't work for Saddam Hussein. Ironically, what's happening in Iraq is that the majority Shia government is now persecuting the minority Sunni government. No lessons learned here from history. So first, the change in our foreign policy must be a recognition of a lack of understanding of what's going on there. We are strangers in that land. We cannot project all state-to-state power politics onto a revolution that knows few borders, that is guided by massive transnational thought streams, such as a renaissance in Islamic political and cultural thinking, a renaissance that is far more modern and complex than is ever reported. Let us admit it, we as a nation are frightened by the energy, the chaos, the modernity, the unknown of the unfolding of the depth of the revolution, unleashed mostly by revolutionaries with a nationalistic fervor and in some cases inspired by Islamic ideals. We fear it not because of inherent prejudices, but because we cannot understand, influence, or predict its evolution. The revolution unfolding before us has been enabled by the tools of our technology, but the flowering of the ideas and the metamorphosis of the political force is beyond the control of China, Russia, the United States, or the major European powers. Our technology has started a prairie fire for which we have no answers today. The traditional superpowers such as the United States have become spectators, not actors in the unfolding world order. That one reality is in itself very frightening in this uncertain and dangerous world. The question is, how much are we able to impact or be relevant to this movement? Or is the genie totally out of the bottle? The US must recalibrate its strategies to address this sweeping change across the Middle East for its own national self-interest. We cannot be in denial as to how profoundly the grounds have shifted and how much more it is shifting as we speak. Political Islam will continue to be on the rise again in the region. This Islamic movement is not just a flash in the pan. It will be a major factor in the foreseeable future, perhaps in the next several decades. The word Muslim Brotherhood or Pan-Islamic should be incorporated in our diplomatic jargon and must be studied with discipline and not frowned at with disdain and fear. Frankly speaking, put in proper perspective, they do not go against our core principles or policies of tolerance and pluralism. After all, there is nothing wrong with a political party if they are known as the Christian Democrats or the Orthodox Jews. We have to interact with these Islamic-oriented political forces, which only a few years ago were branded as radicals or extremists, unless, and I repeat, unless, any of them makes any explicit or covert declarations to hurt the U.S. interest, to hurt U.S. national interest, or our interests in the region. It is also possible that by engaging with moderate Islamist parties, we might be able to marginalize their more extremist factions. These are the ground realities which we no longer can ignore. What we are witnessing in the Arab world today is truly transformational. The fire that swept the region, which started in Tunisia with a disparate and hopeless fruit vendor who put an end to his life by incinerating himself in flames, and which subsequently engulfed Egypt, Libya, Yemen, Bahrain, and Syria, is quite historic. Although the brutality, the savagery, the inhumanity of the Assad regime, I can talk about it for hours, but let me concentrate on one country, if you may allow me, and that is Egypt. The turn of events in Egypt demands our immediate attention. Why? Because Egypt, a nation of 85 million Arabs, and considered to be the citadel of Islamic civilization, the soul of the Arab culture, has to get it right first. the entire revolution towards restoring human dignity and the rightful democratic aspirations of the Arab nations will fall if Egypt falls short in that pursuit. Allow me to bring to your attention a few recent developments in that country. Number one, the Egyptian revolution, which was sparked by calls for freedom and dignity and inspired mostly by youth, women, and others, resulted in governance options bearing no such characteristics. What they ended up was an Islamist, a former regime crony, or the de facto ruling power, the military. Number two, after promising to usher in a democratic process, the military has instead pursued the policy of holding on to its power grip at all costs. They have dissolved the parliament and unilaterally slashed the powers of the would-be president, which would now be only a temporary position with no legislative powers or controls over the military. Number three, the military has also announced it would appoint a 100-member body to draft a new constitution, giving it significant control over the direction of this document. Number four, in uncanny timing, the former President Hosni Mubarak was reportedly moved to a military hospital in critical condition, some reporting him as clinically dead. Number five, gunmen took advantage of Egypt's increasingly lawless Sinai Peninsula, infiltrating into Israel and killing an Israeli civilian. And lastly, final results of the presidential runoff elections were announced after a prolonged wait and perhaps behind-the-scenes negotiation, increasing people's suspicion and motives of the military. Let me put this in as unambiguously as possible to the Egyptian military, the Muslim Brotherhood, and all the other stakeholders in Egypt. The world is watching you. The time is past when any one of these players could play games with the destiny of the common Egyptians. To President-elect Mohamed Morsi, a US-educated engineer, I say, be truthful to your mandate and commitment to serve the people. Honor your international treaties and obligations and join the community of nations as an honorable and respectable world leader. The United States is the main supporter of the Egyptian military, providing $1.3 billion annually. There is no better time than now for the US government to send a clear message to the ruling military junta that this pipeline can be halted if they have any other plans but to hand over power, both legislative and executive, to the elected representative of the Egyptian people. Ladies and gentlemen, we should make it amply clear that democratically elected politicians, even Islamist ones, always rank above generals. Yes, the world is watching us too. For years, people across the Muslim world have drawn a distinction between their displeasure of the US government and their affinity for the American people. For many, the US government is responsible for policies that offend sensibilities, such as the torture at Abu Ghraib, the burnings of the Holy Quran, civilian casualties by drone attacks, or something that made lives of ordinary people difficult and miserable, like blindly supporting the brutal Mubarak regime for decades. It is the strong rejection of certain US policies that has led to widespread disapproval of American in polling across the Muslim world. Last year, the Arab American Institute, based in Washington, D.C., conducted a poll in the Arab world, and the findings, though devastating, were not really unexpected. What was found out was that America's overall favorable rating across the Arab world was lower in 2011 than they have been in the last year of the Bush administration. More troubling than the precipitous decline in America's standing in the Arab world are the constraints this situation has imposed on the ability of the United States to to play a constructive role in the region. However, as I mentioned before, the American people are regarded differently. Our businesses are known for the innovation and our education system for teaching critical thinking skills. A degree from an American university has long been coveted, while an unlocked iPhone has become an apple of desire. Our political processes and entertainment sectors have long been international standard bearers, from the presidential election of the son of an African immigrant to explosive Hollywood blockbusters. While the Israeli-Palestinian conflict may twist the masses in knots, Facebook and iPhone make them smile. To engage the Muslim world effectively, a world that does not always distinguish a sharp separation between religion and politics, we must frame our public diplomacy with full cognizance of the cultural, historical, religious, and social context of that region. We have to broaden our approach to interact directly and through a variety of media with many of the religious groups, civil societies, women's organizations, youth fronts, and a range of professional entities. Those who fundamentally oppose the US and the Arab Muslim community gain credibility anytime when they can characterize the US as anti-Muslim. In recent years, the isolated but disturbingly growing anti-Muslim attacks and incidents attributed to our government or our citizens merely serve as ammunition for our enemies. To combat this toxic characterization of the US as anti-Muslim, we need to have a two-pronged attack. First, we must unyieldingly confront bigotry against Islam, no matter what faith that bigotry purports to represent. Nothing can be more powerful antidote to our enemies than the picture of Americans of all creeds and races united in defense of citizens of any faith when they or their faith are attacked, stereotyped, or discriminated. Indeed, this follows the rich tradition in this country of citizens spearheading the assurance of civil and religious rights for all. Second, abroad, we have to unambiguously refute the anti-Muslim characterization of America and make the case that while far from perfect, the US is the home of millions of Muslims, most of whom have chosen to make this their home and have honor and live here honorably and respectively. We would be wise to clearly communicate that the US Constitution respects the religious rights of all people, of all faith, without favoring any over the other. Public diplomacy must be viewed as a component of our national security strategy, rather than an image-centric endeavor. Our efforts in the past to sell America via...
Is there a button there?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Our efforts in the past to sell America via an image-focused public relations approach have been ineffective, even at times counterproductive. They should be replaced with the understanding of its key role in meeting our national security and foreign policy goals. One of our most important goals is to win the war of ideas with Islamic political parties and other fringe groups. We will continue to fail in our traditional counterterrorism approach if we don't recognize that neither military nor covert operations are going to truly get to the root cause of this issue, which is fundamentally ideological. As former Secretary of Defense Robert Gates once said, and I quote, "We know we cannot kill or capture our way to victory. We also cannot spend our way to establish democracy. Otherwise, countries like Pakistan, Egypt, and Afghanistan, where we contribute billions, should be paragons of democracy. Our goal should be to prevent 60% of the Muslim world that is under the age of 30 from turning radical anti-American ideologies. It is challenging, but not impossible. History has demonstrated that a nuanced political diplomatic approach by the US can support transformational change, as was shown by South Africa's change from apartheid. Public diplomacy involves outreach to foreign population through cultural exchanges, media engagements, academic grants, interfaith initiatives, exchange programs, etc. To do this skillfully, we need the intense collaboration of not only our government, but also the active participation from our multivarious civic groups and societies, not-for-profit organizations, foundations, and the help from many lion-hearted individual Americans dedicated to the betterment of our common humanity. I know of one such organization, and I'm proud to say that I belong to it. It's called America's Unofficial Ambassadors. The underlying premise of America's Unofficial Ambassadors is that private American citizens have the power to improve America's relationship with the Muslim world through people-to-people contact. Through short-term volunteer service in areas of human development, America's Unofficial Ambassadors strive to A, help address human deficits throughout the Muslim world, B, build positive people-to-people contact between the Muslim world, extending from the Middle East to Africa and from South to Southeast Asia, and C, decrease Islamophobia in America in all its form and manifestations. America's Unofficial Ambassadors is a citizens' initiative. Its success relies upon the action and effort of private citizens like you. Let me conclude by saying that America has always been at its best when it has led by example and with humility rather than by dictate. At a time when we face competition from an economically robust and expansive China, an ideologically determined Iran, and the destruction of violent extremism which garners support from the East and South Asia to the Middle East, to the oil and mineral-rich continents of Africa, the U.S. must provide a robust vision of the future that is morally grounded in our own practice of inclusive, forward-thinking society. It will be our willingness to assist, to rely not only, it will be our willingness to rely not only on our military superiority, but also our soft power to assist nations to achieve security and prosperity based on respect for individual rights and economic opportunity that will reassert America as a beacon of hope for our common humanity. In 1987, President Ronald Reagan courageously asked Mr. Gorbachev to tear down that Berlin Wall, and that inspired hope. In 2009, President Obama's historic speech to an auditorium filled with young Egyptian men and women and broadcast across the world was a similar message of hope. He made it clear with his pronouncements that the U.S. understands the aspirations and challenges of the Arab street, supporting the political desire towards the creation of a democratic environment and a prosperous economy based on basic human decency and dignity. Today, the United States is in the midst of an election year, and partisan politics and not real policies might take center stage. I'm afraid of that. However, we cannot forego our traditional and legitimate leadership role in this very critical period in world history. We are still that ray of hope and that shining light on top of that hill from which millions around the world draw inspiration and courage every day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Siddique. We'd be very happy to extend the conversation to other views. I see the first question or comment here. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. My name is Basma Tribi. I'm an Egyptian Muslim woman, and I'm very much appreciative of your speech, especially with what's happening nowadays in my country. I just wanted to highlight something that many of the people back home think that the U.S. not only is not using its soft power and hard power aligned towards the same direction, but what it's allowing now in Egypt is another Pakistan or another Iran. So not only is it meeting up with the Muslim Brotherhood, but at the same time, the Islamists were not the one who started the revolution. And now there is this hijacking of Islamists throughout the whole Middle East with the uprisings. I just wanted to highlight something that the points that you were making regarding the hopeful or the anticipated shift with regards to the U.S. policies in Egypt are not going to happen anytime soon. With Yani, I really would love to see such a thing, but with Hillary Clinton, with Secretary of State Hillary Clinton saying that she wants the results to come up faster with the elections. It's even though it's for the better sake of democracy per se, but people on the streets do not portray it in such a way. And again, with the American NGO and the fleeing of the American staff, and I worked for this American NGO back in Cairo. So again, I'd like for such a thing to happen, but I do not foresee such a thing in the near future, especially with rhetoric. It's like Ambassador Schneider, she said the same thing yesterday with regards to Egypt and the hope that soft power can be moved towards the use and the benefit of hard power again in the region. But backing the U.S. backing of the Egyptian military, it's not going to stop anytime soon. And I'd like to see more of soft power use from the military perspective, but not through the general notion. There is this video going on right now on Egyptian TVs saying that we do not want you to speak to foreigners because they're spies. So, Yani, I do see your point with regards to the hopeful shift, but I do not foresee any steps being pushed for such direction from the U.S. government to the Egyptian military, especially the SCAF. Yani, with regards to the exchange programs and cultural diplomacy, I do believe that their significance will be not only gigantic, but it's going to be the only hope for decreasing Islamophobia in the States, and at the same time raising more awareness of the culture powers of the U.S. back in the Middle East. But I do not see this happening again. I think that there's like so much talk being in D.C. and listening to all this. It's totally different on the ground back home. And when you listen to people talking about the U.S. again infiltrating or the U.S. interfering at the same time, we're like, we want the Muslim Brotherhood. We're talking to the Muslim Brotherhood at the same time. We're giving 1.4 billion, 1.5 billion to the Egyptian military. And we want a democracy. But the Muslim Brotherhood are not the Democratic Party. And with a court ruling that there's a very imminent ruling that the Muslim Brotherhood, the Freedom and Justice Party, may not be legalized in the coming days. So I think the complexity of the situation is, I think it's way much more than just, as an Egyptian, it's way much more than just a hopeful gesture. But I think there has to be some sort of...
You're right.
It's a total, utter change with regards to the Middle East, and Egypt being portrayed as like, if it succeeds, every other country in the Middle East will have hope. I get that from my Arab friends. They're like, you're our only hope. If it works at you or at your home, then it could probably work at our home. But I don't see this happening.
Well, let me say, I think I get the gist of your question.
Thank you so much.
You're I can see you're a little skeptic, you're a little nervous, you're a little scared. But let me tell you this, I'm an optimist. Look what has Egypt achieved so far. It's not perfect. It's messy. Okay, we have, as you have said, we have a government that none of us anticipated. But you know what? If the people, democracy is messy, but it flushes out a lot of inequalities, a lot of impurities. We have to give Egypt time to fix its procedures, but at the same time, the United States has a role, has a responsibility, and our biggest tie with Egypt is also military. As I said, $1.3 billion. I would say that we will not be doing anybody any favor if we wink and nod to the military today and say that, look, you can do whatever you feel like, but keep the facade of democracy on. True democracy has to take place in Egypt, whether it's going to be through the Muslim Brotherhood or some other group that might come up. But the process has started. It is very difficult. It is the climbing is going to be will be hard, but there's no going back. And I feel very confident that the Egyptian people, you are the culture, the nerve center of the Arab world. You are the conscience of the Arab world. You are not going to let this get away without results. So I feel very strongly, I have faith in the Egyptian people, and I feel that the people's cries, people's aspiration ultimately will prevail.
Do you have faith that Captain Pin will shift its handling of U.S.-Egyptian military relations?
Well, I think Hillary Clinton has made it very clear, and you cannot make pronouncements overtly of a lot of things, but the writing is on the writings is on the wall. They are on the wall, and there's no going back. The Egyptian military cannot be totally eliminated in the equation. There is a role for them to play, but how much they will play and how they will not play. The Turkish foreign minister is here, and I would like to take the example of Turkey. The military played a very big role in the past. Prime Minister Erdogan, he is one smart politician, one patient politician who understands the pulse of the people, he understands the pulse of the nation. The way he has navigated his country today, where the military was looming over them, he has put the military, he has not shamed the military, he has not dishonored the military, but he has put the military in the right place. And he has done it with hard work, and he has taken time, and he has worked all the angles. So I have hope for Egypt that if Turkey can be such a great democratic and economic model today, Egypt can do same, if not better.
Thank you very much. Mine will not be a question, but since I served in Egypt for 4 years and in many Arab countries altogether 12 years, I may also share with you my perception of what is taking place.
Wonderful.
In it.
Thank you, sir.
Of course, democracy is counted by the ballot boxes. I mean, whatever comes out of it, you have to admit. You cannot say that democracy is good when the party that I support wins, and it's not good when
That's right.
they win. And as to Egypt, I entirely share with your perception that the distance, the ground which is covered, is an acquisition. It is already acquired
Correct.
by the Egyptian people, and there is no retreat back from there. On the other hand, we know that the crown makes the king wiser. Now that the Muslim Brothers came to power, they will learn by experience that by promising paradise in the hereafter, you cannot create jobs. To create jobs, you need science, data, economic knowledge, etc. And they will sooner or later understand that it is not only by making people more pious that you obtain something. This will happen in Egypt, and Egypt is a country where when the European countries were still at the very early stage of civilization, in the pharaonic times, there was a very high civilization, and the Egyptian people are inheritors of this big culture. So I don't think that the Egyptians will give up this advance that they have as compared to the other people. There will be difficulties.
Yes.
The role to be played by the army exactly, it will unfold the way you described. Most probably, when I visited Egypt on several occasions, many political movements there were saying that our target is not this election. We are preparing ourselves for the elections after. And it will be those elections that will count. And I don't think that Egyptian people who was able to overthrow Mubarak regime when it was so strong will be able to overthrow also the Muslim Brothers regime if
they don't perform.
Deviates
Exactly.
from the path which is expected. This is my perception.
Your Excellency, you have said it better than I could. Thank you very much for clearing up this thing.
Think we have many hands, but we're actually about 10 minutes over time. But if the ambassador of Kyrgyzstan would allow me, maybe we'll do one more question. Is that okay? I don't want to keep you waiting too long. Maybe for a change, we'll go to this side.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. I'm also an Egyptian. I'm half American, half Egyptian, and I grew up in Egypt. And I just wanted to go back to this idea of exchange of Muslims, people from the Arab world, and Americans. And I have taken part in a lot of exchange programs representing Egypt, representing Muslims. And honestly, I can say that the people that have access in the Arab world to these exchange programs are always people of upper class, people who are, and these people honestly can't represent Islamic understanding or faith of the majority of Egypt, for instance. I cannot say that I understand what the majority lower class, what their perception is of Islam. And I can't say that I am a perfect representation of this, because honestly, I can't say that, and I can speak on behalf of a very large percentage of people my age, how long I have not really dealt with what Islam is in its essence. What my understanding of Islam is very cultural, it's very societal, it's very traditional, it's all based on oral tradition and what's been told to me by society. And I think that this is lacking in the Arab world in terms of education, naturally, and that was kind of part of it. That was a strategy of the corrupt regime. But also in the States, I realized that religion isn't taught as a class in school, for instance. But I think that it should, as understanding comparative faiths, or because it's become such a large and important aspect of the world we're living in, and it's turning into an even more important aspect of what, the geography and the history and the geopolitical structure of the world. It's becoming so much more vital to be taught, and so I think that I would recommend it to be taught by someone who's to Americans, by an American, or by people who have really studied it in an academic way, to be able to really convey the essence of what it is, rather than, so I honestly I would be scared if someone were to say I'm representing Islam to the American people and that is supposed to suffice. I would love to try to, but I know that I'm not qualified, as I would not expect my understanding of Christianity to come from one Christian person that I've met. I would want to be taught academically, and that was what I have been taught. I took comparative religion. My perception is therefore a lot better than it was before that class. So.
Well, you're doing a good job. Keep at it. But the important thing is that the effort, the realization has to be there, and all parties have to get together. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ambassador Siddique.